coming. I dream of the darkness in between, and it is waiting for me. I dream of the Fiffis, and I am afraid.
There were two medical doctors dressed up in garb. They had a body on the table, and that there was lights on this, and that there was camera equipment, both motion picture and a man taking still photography, and that there were 2 other men along the wall that he later found out all 5 of them were doctors, and that one room they were all military doctors. There were 2 tables side by side, and on the 2 tables were 2 dead alien beings. He said that his whole world shattered that day, and he began to cry as he related the rest of the story. And his hands were shaking, and every once in a while he would stop in telling the story and revert back to, I don't know why this happened to me. He said that one of these alien beings looked perfectly normal, that you didn't see anything wrong with it, but it was obviously dead. But the alien being on the table next to it was just the opposite. It was horribly burned, had a horrific wound in one of its legs, but the look on its face, he couldn't forget it, was the look of anguished horror at the moment of its death, and it was frozen on this being's face. The autopsy was already going on. He couldn't say anything to anybody. He was just frozen in silence. He said the stench was unbelievable, and that he was overcome by the situation and wanted to vomit, but he knew he couldn't. He wanted to run out of the room, but he knew he couldn't. And that for the first several minutes that he was in the room, that he just was transfixed, staring at what was going on and wasn't writing anything. And then he remembered the directive he was given: write. Anything that comes to your head, write it down. So he said, with almost not looking at the paper, just staring at what was going on, anything that came to his head, he wrote it down on the paper. He said that these were obviously living creatures, but unlike any kind of living creature that he'd ever seen before, he said it was like they weren't real, like they were dolls or something. And I said, I don't understand what that means. And he said, they just didn't have the appearance of being weathered. And I said, I don't understand what you mean. He said, well, look at your skin. Think about living creatures. They're not pristine. They don't look like a doll sitting on a shelf. These creatures didn't have any signs of age. I said, you talking wrinkles? He said, exactly. They didn't look like they were wrinkled. They looked like big, huge 4-foot dolls. They were not powerful beings. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, strong. They didn't have big shoulders. They had real slender arms. They were not powerful at all. Slim fingers and just small frame. They were not big. These were just little creatures. And the first thing about them that he noticed right away was when they were looking at one of the eyes. He said that this eye that they were examining, it wasn't anything like a human eye, and it didn't even look like some kind of living creature's eye. He said it was more like an optical instrument. He said it had layers, and it looked like some kind of optical device more than it did a real eye. It wasn't like it was living tissue like you would see in a human eye or any organism. He said it was more like an optical device from a camera or something like that. It didn't look living. It looked mechanical. And he said the second thing that he noticed and wrote down, these creatures didn't have sex organs. And that led to him medically beginning to think, there's no way for them to relieve themselves. There are no exterior orifices. If these things are living creatures, all living creatures eat, and all living creatures expel waste. I don't see how they do that, he said. And the next thing, he started looking at the mouth and went, the mouth doesn't look like it was a carnivore, like it would eat like an ape, or was kind of like hominid, but it was nothing like a human being. It looked more like, kind of almost like an insect, he said, in the shape of its head. And the insect part of it, maybe that's why its eye was so funny, that it was totally different than a human eye. It didn't look like it ate, like it was solid food, or that it might live on fluids or something. But then knowing how a human being expels liquid from its body, how did this creature do that? And he couldn't see any signs of that. And then he said they opened up the thoracic section of the body, and that it had organs and internal components, but nothing like a human being, and not nearly as complex. And that really got his attention right away. You open up a human being that's just packed with all sorts of things, including the GI tract and the lungs and all that, and there were living things inside, but not what he would have thought of. These creatures weren't as complex as we were. There was just things missing inside of them. It baffled him. They're obviously a living organism, but how does this living organism function? And the next thing he noticed, he said, was its hands. Their hands were, for the size of the body, larger, but very delicate with long fingers, and there was something odd about them. There was like hands on their fingertips. And I said, do you think these things were intelligent? He looked at me kind of stunned, and I said, well, how could they not be? This isn't their world, and they're here. And I hadn't thought about that. I was just overwhelmed by the story. These are extraterrestrials. These are people from another world. And now I'm starting to get overwhelmed by the whole thing. And this was what was disturbing him so bad, this event that happened to him in his past. He said that the next thing he noticed about them was that he didn't see anything else in the room but them. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, clothing. They were naked, dead bodies, and you didn't see anything that might belong to them in the room. He said, exactly. There was nothing in the room. And there was this horrible stench, unlike any smell he'd ever smelled before. And that when he started watching their bodies and just looking at them from head to toe, he said they had a very pale complexion, but what was their body, the skin, their covering, it almost had a fabric-like look to it. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, I mean just that. It was obviously their flesh, their body, but it sure didn't look like soft human tissue that is on a human body.
Now, does the Hatman differ from general shadow people, Heidi?
Yes, he does. He's not a shadow person at all. I had initially put him up on my website as a shadow person because it was something that my friend, my college roommate, had actually experienced, had seen in her bedroom, and I just assumed, oh God, another form they're taking on. So placed the drawing up on my website, only to get an unbelievable amount of email in connection to that drawing. And the pattern that was forming was something that I really did not want to even look at. I didn't even want to know what it was, and also I named all these different figures, these shadow people, and I just call them the Hatman shadow. Well, I was way wrong. The letters that came in, the pattern started to form, where people were saying, this guy is very solid. He just to describe what he looks like, he's got like a fedora or like a Zorro type hat, a gaucho type hat, and he wears a three-piece suit. He wears a cape or a long French coat. Some people have even described seeing a watch with a chain on his hip. Sometimes he has a goatee, sometimes he's clean-shaven. If you ever see his eyes, sometimes they glow red, other times they're solid black. And people would say to me, they'd write and they would say, who is this guy? He's the devil, isn't he? It's like they would answer their own questions. Of what this guy is doing. It's typically he shows up at the base of their bed, just watching them. Other times he's just
but is he on the wall as a shadow, or what? Does he kind of linger?
He's very, very solid, very, very real.
But shadowy form?
No.
No,
he's very solid. He's not a shadow person. Or just before a terrible thing happens or a death happens, people are also dreaming about him. And I had one gentleman write to me, and he told me he was on a military base in Germany. And this military base, they had a lot of strange things going on in a haunted sense, I guess you could say. And he was supposed to go on duty at 4 a.m. His alarm went off. He got up. He went into the bathroom to get himself ready, and in the mirror, he saw a guy standing behind him, and it dawned on him, like, oh my gosh, what's the civilian doing here?
Yeah.
And he saw it was the Hatman dressed, in his typical clothing, and he asked him, who are you? And he said, I'm Scratch.
I'm Scratch.
Now, that name, he did not know what that name stood for. That is an Old Norse term for Old Scratch, the devil. Yeah. Very, very disturbing. So he outright admitted to who he is by saying he was Scratch. So people are getting him actually speaking to them in their dreams. Another one, though, this was no dream. This gentleman, he had attempted suicide, and he woke up in the hospital and turned to his bedside, and there was a Hatman sitting there looking at him. And he said, I almost had you.
Are you saying that the ETs that are hooked into this shadow, this Hatman, this Hatman, not the and shadow people as well, are they all related? All related?
They are related in a sense because of their role that they're playing. The shadow people are essentially the force behind what's directing the more negative beings to do the abductions, to try to conquer this planet. And this is not the first planet that they've done this to.
What are you reporting? We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. It looks like a man. I don't know what it was. Just that it ran across the yard.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was. Whatever it is, it's running. I couldn't catch it if I was going to chase it. So whatever it was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better... Sheriff, Theo!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
This son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's like...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, he's got, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
I dream of the Fiffis. I am afraid.
Alright then. The summary report on Experiment 6486, also known as the Fiffis Project. Before I begin, I'm glad to see someone finally giving a crap about this abomination experiment. This, along with the Gerald Zimmerman case and the so-called virus found at Outpost 31, seem to be a waste of valuable resources.
Your opinion is noted. Continue, please.
17 years after your offering Never like this is all walking in the slabbery, getting in the bad made the merch in the rails on it. All hold me so what now now. Never have skied on me, you know, the listen to this mix it. Mom the self see this and out yeah, the slaps and rips skin with ski bad the hat. And the back is never done listen to mom of this that you Swang sa was no was sharp but was no real how was yesterday. Oh, no was hard me give away ski. Starts still looks in that. Such as you're not was like shelves which is all this fucking skin after the split the raise out. Now I'll be the skin keep my shall in this and skin him search and share against the over. I he'll have to get my spots to drop but as it you know this mom up saying he's this. Ser wings my spots in the heart. So see what at the see wounds. Now we let's see what the maps around and listen. See this large
The men of darkness, the men of old, the men of addition, they have no fear. They only fear the one that has the power to send them to the abyss before the time. They flee to mention the name that is above all names. The name of the Fiffis.
Being there and then suddenly gone. In 10 months of extensive searching, the experiment has yet to be found. However, in February of this year, there was a sighting of our lost experiment following the Shaberkel incident. When investigated, all that was found out was the experiment had gone into what is now being called the Abyss of Shaberkel. We fear now that we may have lost the so-called Fiffis, but the search goes on. This and the other failures, such as the Zimmerman case, are the biggest blights here at Camp Hero, but we have high hopes for the future. Nobody, and I mean nobody, escapes Montauk for long. Thank you.
People like myself who fight monsters must always be cautious not to become one themselves. For if you gaze into the abyss gazes back. And I've gazed into the abyss, and I saw the darkness. And something lurks there. It beckons to me, and I am going to it. Don't come looking for me. You might not like what you find.